Good morning. Thanks so much for having me, and ponies, unicorns, and magic, if you remember nothing else. So we'll get started here. So lumber comes from forests, and here's how it works. We have a picture of second growth stand of Doug fir, and it's going to get clear cut. They're going to spray chemicals all over the place, make sure nothing else grows but new fir trees when they get those in the ground. They're going to take all those trees to an industrial mill in the middle of nowhere. Now is going to begin the life of a sad 2x4 at Home Depot. Pretty inspiring. So here's a different kind of tree. This is a cherry tree. It's at a college across the street from my house. And the cherries are actually pretty good. I make pies in the summer with my neighbors. Now, when we see a tree like this, we think of it pretty differently. It's like a member of the community. It's kind of like one of our pets. And yes, that is a dog in a tutu. And you know, how do we feel about our pets? Feels good. Now, let's back up for a second and say, well, this tree, just like the trees in the forest, has a shelf life. Just like us, it's going to die. And what's going to happen to that? Is it going to turn into lumber? And in fact, it's not. So this is a dirty little secret about all of our pet trees in the cities. In fact, every year, 4 billion board feet of lumber ends up as firewood, mulch, or actually even worse, a lot of times it just goes to the dump. And I think that's kind of amazing that the trees that become the sad 2x4s at Home Depot actually end up having a higher purpose than the trees in our neighborhood. Now, what if we back up for a second and we say the tree comes down, and instead of cutting up for firewood, we look on Craigslist, we find a guy with a bandsaw, he comes over and he mills the wood and makes it into some slabs. We can turn that into a flippin' amazing cherry bench. So this bench actually came from a cherry tree that I removed from a job a couple years ago. And I actually have it right here. Might as well bring the props with. So I don't know if everybody can see it, but I thought this is a heck of a lot nicer way to have something instead of I'm not sure if anybody thinks that I should cut that up for firewood. I'm pretty sure my wife might get pretty mad at me. So right now it's really wacky and weird. There's random trees that come down here and there, and like that tree I showed you that was being cut up for firewood, that was a 50-inch diameter silver maple tree that was cut down about 3 weeks ago. I was going to try and grab it and mill it with my chainsaw mill. I couldn't because when they cut it down, it was too short and it had a bunch of metal in the tree. And that's kind of a lot of these problems with getting urban trees, is there are some logistics that make it difficult to do. But what I'm saying is, what if we actually plan for the future with urban lumber in mind? So in the future, every tree that comes down has the potential to be turned into something beautiful. So here's a couple examples. This is Intel. So you can tell this is a pretty typical corporate landscape. There's a couple trees in a row, doink, 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 some ubiquitous landscaping plants, and a whole heck of a lot of lawn. Now, to me, this seems kind of crazy because not only does it cost money to install this landscape, it actually costs a lot of money to maintain it. And you don't get anything out of that. I mean, it's kind of a lazy landscape when you think about it. And who wants that? I mean, businesses are in business to make money. So why would you do something that costs you money? So here's a little bit about what I'm talking about. I thought this is a bit of an improvement. So I laid out a whole bunch of trees, about 100 trees. And you can see how many trees you can actually put in. If you're not familiar with what a forest looks like, I'd advise you to go out, walk around, see how that is. Obviously, these trees are a little small. They got a lot of potential. And if nothing else, I think having some more trees on the property sure dress up their signs to make it a little bit more friendly. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, I don't live in the Pacific Northwest, And this doesn't really apply to me, and I would actually argue against that. I think that most places in the world do grow trees. In fact, this is a really nice cedar tree. This is in Polanco, Mexico City. All the parks, I was just there in December, all over the place. There was tons of trees that were totally usable for lumber. And I don't know what happens to those trees when they come down, but my guess is most people aren't planning for urban lumber. Now, here's another example. This is a living building project that I worked on over the last couple of years that I consulted on, and I finished up the installation last fall. It's called the Full Plane House. I worked with JRA Construction, I think James is out here somewhere, and Departure Architecture. My partner in crime, landscape architect extraordinaire, Aaron Muir, drew this diagram showing the water cycle of the site. There's a 12,000-gallon cistern, and the foundation of the house, and all that water after it's used goes in the gray water system out into the land and waters fruit trees and blueberry bushes, and we did a lot of earthworks to harvest water. But I really thought, you know, this house, as green as it is, still used a lot of resources, and I thought, well, what could be the most regenerative thing that you could possibly do? Like, let's grow lumber here. So I actually planted over 40 lumber producing trees down at the bottom of the site. It's really simple, as you can tell. I just basically planted them, you know, 10, 15 feet apart from each other, and I cut off the lower limbs, and they'll grow up into valuable, usable lumber. 40 trees, 50 years, 1,000 board feet of lumber per tree, that's 40,000 board feet. At a minimum, that's probably worth $200,000. I mean, this is a very, very, very small piece of land. I want to stress that. Now, so I want to talk about the future, so that everywhere we go, that every tree is usable. And there are a couple of little nuts and bolts things to go over. So first off, I think it's important to encourage designers, contractors, and customers to use urban lumber in their projects when possible. We need to make growing trees for lumber in urban and semi-rural areas a design imperative, not only for the Living Building Challenge, but a cornerstone of sustainable land management, and really in the future, just land management in general. We need to coordinate with policymakers and various stakeholders to create the following: urban lumber certification programs for suppliers to successfully harvest, mill, and dry lumber, education programs to help homeowners and landowners effectively grow lumber, economic development, supply chain management strategies, and long-term forestry management plans with a strong focus on sustainable urban lumber production. But I need your help. So this is a picture of me holding a cherry slab. Flowering cherry slab came from someone's backyard. Behind me is my front porch I built out of black locust trees that were cut down at the college across the street from my house. Black locust is harder than oak and more rot resistant than pressure treat. Oddly enough, it's an invasive tree in Portland on the do not plant list. So I guess you could say I built my front porch out of weeds. But it was a really amazing process. I had a friend of mine, Jeff Nelson, with a company called Tree Cycle Northwest. He milled all the wood about a mile away behind a coffee shop. I dried it in my garage for a couple of years. Went through the process of building it. But it was a really wacky and absurd way to go about building a front porch. I mean, I was really into it. Most people probably wouldn't want to do that. I was terrified if I made a wrong cut because I couldn't go buy any more lumber. And it shouldn't be that way. This should be something that is accessible to everybody on a bigger scale. Hold on, I'm going blank because I just realized I'm standing in front of a lot of people. A lot of really awesome people, yeah! So, really are a lot of people here. And then Paul Hawken speaking, that's great. That's really, yeah, thank you. Hi. This isn't the brilliant part of the speech, I'm just talking, So, what am I really getting at here? I'm not saying that I just want to cut down trees and make lumber. I mean, I actually kind of do. But what I'm talking about is reforesting an entire planet. In the last 100, 150 years, half of the world's trees have been cut down, and we need to put them back. And this incentivizes doing that. I feel like half of the country in the United States, they love to plant trees. That's liberals like me. And Republicans like to cut them down. And I feel like this is a great marriage of that, so everybody gets something out of it, right? And I'm not just talking about planting a couple of trees there. I mean, we need to plant billions and billions of trees, and we need to get started right away, right now. In fact, I got to find a home for all those trees. I took pictures at Intel, so I'm already at 70 trees signed up to go on the ground on some city land across the street from my house. And, you know, I think this is another really beautiful piece of wood. This is from a big leaf maple tree. Here, I guess I'll hold it up over the podium so people can see what it looks like. They'll be up here, people can take a look at them. But we need more things like this in the world. I think that's really important. And I think, you know, I'm going to ask. I'm going to plant some trees this year. I'm going to plant them close together. I'm going to cut some of the lower branches off. I'm going to do that at my projects. I'm going to do that in my own time. And I want to know if anybody else out there wants to join me. So if anybody out there thinks that they want to plant some trees, come on, who can plant 100 trees? Stand up. Come on, let's stand up. Come on, don't be mean. You can plant one tree. It's like $5 for a 1-gallon tree that can sequester carbon. So let's do it. Let's plant some trees. Thanks so much for your time.